You are listening to the Airline Selection Podcast, where we bring you insights to help you succeed at airline selections. This podcast is brought to you by Airline Selection Program. Please welcome your host, airline captain and major airline recruiter, Guillaume Debauchez.
Welcome to a new episode of the Airline Selection Podcast, where we help you with insights and expert tips to help you with your airline selection. And today we have our second episode with Mathieu. Mathieu, how are you doing today?
Very good, thanks.
So Mathieu, as you may know, we discussed it during the first episode, which I invite you to view if you haven't already. He's a bit of a celebrity. He's got a pretty big Instagram channel. How many viewers do you have? How many subscribers do you have on your Instagram?
170,000.
170,000. And you've got even more on TikTok, I think.
Yeah, 220,000, something like this.
Okay, very good. So last time we already mentioned this, but just to, if people want to find you on Instagram, what's the word?
Matpilote with a E at the end because it's French.
Okay, so Matt, M-A-T, Mike Alpha Tango, pilot with an E at the end.
Exactly.
And on TikTok, it's 737 at the end.
Yeah, Matpilote 737.
737 with an E as well, Matpilote.
Yeah.
So E with 737. And then same on YouTube, with
Exactly,
the 737.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. So Mathieu, what he does is he's posting really nice videos of his life as an airline pilot. You post a lot on your layovers, what it's like to live your life, really.
Yeah, well, it's also mostly about the flights and how do you fly the aircraft.
Yeah.
I showed inside of the cockpit and what we do technically, so what the passenger don't see and what the future pilot wants to understand as well. Like we show the approach and I explain a few technical stuff. It stays like everyone can understand it, but it's very interesting to see the other side of the door of the flight deck.
Yeah, I really like the angle that you've taken on this. It's in French, so if you're an English speaker, can you use the subtitles on maybe on YouTube?
Well, for the moment on YouTube, I have a flight from Fez, Morocco to Nantes. It was in French, but I did the voice in English, so you can select and have it in English. It made like 600,000 views.
Wow.
On YouTube, mostly in French, but now you got it in English, so and hopefully we'll get more content in English in the future.
You spend a lot of time doing these videos, editing the videos?
Yes.
Yes. It's a lot of work. But I think it's great to see that you've got such a following, and for you're watching our channel, it's because you are an aspiring pilot. You want to make this into your profession. A lot of those who are watching your channel, they could be also aspiring pilots, but maybe just aviation enthusiasts. But if you're watching this and you're really an aspiring pilot, you know what we do at Airline Selection Program. We help you succeed at your airline selection. There's very many things that we do. And one topic that's super important for us is for you to understand the airline pilot role. One of the reasons pilots fail at airline interviews, they don't understand the airline pilot role, even if they are flight school students and they've been dreaming to become a pilot and they've invested a lot of money and a lot of sweat and tears to get the license. They still don't have a good enough idea what this life will actually entail. So when you get into advanced interview course, there's a whole module, a huge module on the airline pilot role, how to make decisions, how to intervene with your colleague, how to manage your workload, explaining what your life is made of and the challenges you will have operationally and as well as personally. So this is like a master content to explain this to you in ways that you can restitute at the interview. But I think it would be great to complement this with the content that Mathieu has done that can really show it to you in an even clearer way, so to say.
Yeah, you got a real idea of what is the job. I just try to show the things as they are without giving my opinion much, but just to show what is really like the job. Like in one day, in some videos, I show the 4 flights of the days, or sometimes you do just one long flight. Or on some videos, you have the communication with the ATC, and then you really understand what it means when we say English is important if you want to be a pilot, because most of the time the captain with who you are working doesn't speak your native language, and his native language is not English as well. So you need to talk English with him, and the ATC, the air traffic controllers, the communication in English can be something in different countries.
Yes, and the more you'll see that when you also travel away from Europe, problems tend to compile, and communication becomes one of those compiling issues. What do you think, before we dive into today's topic, which, by the way, is we're going to go through your job search and how you were successful at your very first job at Ryanair. But what do you think is the main challenge of the airline pilot role in the right-hand seat when you're getting started as a pilot? What do you think is the main operational challenge that you face?
When you doing the training, when you start the job?
No, I would say on the line. When you're
on the line,
yeah.
I think it's to adapt to every different captain and everyday situation. Like with Ryanair, I was very lucky, but because they are very organized, and since they have about 5,000 pilots all across Europe, as you said, in Emirates, it's very standardized.
Yes.
So everyone is working the same way. And basically, if the guy has been trained and started his career with Ryanair, the captain, then the day will be easy because everyone is working the same, and it makes the day super nice.
Yeah,
I would say. And some days you still have to adapt to different situations. And
but you would still say that the biggest challenge is adapting to your colleague?
Well, yes and no. No, the biggest challenge for me with Ryanair was because Ryanair, the job is very organized, clear, and if you do the job and you invest yourself in understanding the procedures, then you do them well and everything is smooth. But then the job starts when you came at the airport and finish when you leave the airport. You don't have any hotel, accommodation, transportation. And with Ryanair, I did like 6 different bases in 3 years. So every time the challenge was sometimes too. Because I finished my line training I was in Sevilla. I finished the line training. The next day they called me, "Hey, can you go to Lisbon for 2 months?" Yes, no problem. I mean, of course you start, so you want to do the job. Okay, you start next week in Lisbon. But then in Lisbon, you have to report at 5 o'clock in the morning at the airport. And your salary when you start is about 1,800 euro per month. And then you have to arrange everything, transportation, accommodation. It sometimes is the challenge as well, if you're traveling, is to organize your life apart from the job.
Okay, so that's interesting. It's an operational challenge linked to the logistics of your own life in an airline like Ryanair.
But at the end, this was my case, and some people, they will get the base they want at home, and then the life is completely different.
Okay.
So this job is different, depend on your base.
And once on the flight deck, you'd say the main challenge, it remains a human challenge to adapt to even if the SOPs are fine, to adapt to their personality, because one day you'll have someone who's very talkative, the next day you'll have someone very quiet.
I would say yes, because it was what makes the day different. Apart from this, everything is the same.
Right.
Of course, when you have a low experience, you're gonna do the landing, so you feel some stress and pressure. You want to do well, and then when you get more experience, you have more confidence, and landing the aircraft feels like a normal stuff. But when you are just on 100 hours and you have to land the aircraft, it's raining, it's a night, you have a bit of pressure yes, which is healthy, I think,
yes.
for yourself. But I think it was the challenge at the beginning. But
this is interesting that you chose this topic of adapting to your colleague, because you see how, and this is very true, and you see why at the airline selection level, an airline is going to focus on the human resource side of you, which is a side of you which you have never really learned much about during flight school. Because they know this challenge is are you going to fit? Are you going to fit culturally with our airline? And like, for instance, an airline that is SOP focused, are you going to fit culturally? Are you going to be someone who's going to naturally fit with others? Do you respond well when you're being challenged? Do you know how to challenge someone who's not responding in the way that you expect? This is what they're going to want to find out at the interview. And I often say this, we often see excellent candidates academically. So these are candidates who never failed anything in their life, because when they have a goal at school and later at flight school, they work, they're smart, they get results. And now all of a sudden, what's asked of them is non-academic. It's HR related. And you ask this from a very young person, or even from an older person who's not given it enough thought, and they can be wrong-footed quite quickly, and all of a sudden they would fail. and we see this often, candidates coming to us after a first failure, not understanding what had happened, particularly if they didn't get a debriefing. And it can be very destabilizing. Fortunately, you've not been through this because you passed
Yes.
your very first selection. The topic of this episode was for you to tell us how it happened. So we left the last episode at the MCC. You finished your MCC with Sky4U, and you were telling us within 2 weeks.
Yeah, I got a date for the interview.
Yeah.
It was in Roma, Aviomar.
All right.
Rome. Yeah, at the end they were doing the assessment there.
Okay.
So you book the ticket, everything. So I knew this interview was like the chance of my life. I wanted to be prepared the best. So what I did is, even if I was just coming back from 3 weeks of simulator, I paid again like a simulator session just before the day of the interview at the flight school with another candidate. So I could train again and really adapt to the simulator. And before the interview, Ryanair sent you like a PDF documents, and you know everything you can expect. So like if you want to prepare yourself, they give you the tool, which is the good point. And as well, so the interview was in 3 parts with Ryanair. First part was some technical questions. So for this, I asked feedback around me, even during the day of the interview, of the people going before me, but like of people who did the assessment before. I looked on internet, so you know which kind of technical question you can expect. Then you have some HR question, human resource question. Basically, they want to see. It's basic questions, but it's better to prepare them so you don't get surprised, and they want to see if you know a bit about them as well, like if you know the challenge of the new aircraft.
Operation, yes.
Yeah, as what you say in your course.
Yeah,
exactly. And then you have the simulator, and as you say, the simulator, they know you may not know the aircraft exactly, so they will assess. You are with another candidate doing the simulator, and they will assess how you communicate, and they will do some failure. You know the scenario, but it's all about how you react and everything.
Okay, so let's go through first of all how you prepared. So you have at the interview there are technical questions and HR questions in the same interview.
Yes.
Right. So you said you prepared for that. We were preparing this episode. You were saying you went on the internet and then you spoke to some friends, people you knew, and then even on the day you tried to get some information on some more questions. So you had only 2 weeks to prepare, but did you prepare before as well, or did you start to think about this beforehand?
Yes and no. During the MCC, what was happening is every day we were like on the training file, the instructor were putting things, and during the interview with Ryanair, they had this training file.
Right.
So during the MCC, they could see if we were good or not, because it was 3 weeks of training, intensive training.
Yeah,
and
they can really see you there.
And you really need to learn new things every day. The MCC was a real challenge, actually. So when you go to the interview, they have the file of the MCC.
Yeah, so in fact, at the interview, they're going to have this ATPL results, which we know now that they put a lot of importance on. And they'll have the results from the MCC. So they've got quite a well-documented file to make an educated decision on you, really. Okay, good. So you said, but for the technical and HR interview, how did you then prepare specifically for this?
I just trained myself of replying to those answers.
Okay, with your common sense?
Just common sense. The questions were not that difficult, but you need to find the answer. Like the question was, what is the game changer? How do you recognize from outside the 737 MAX or NG?
So the game changer, if you don't know, it's what they call their Boeing 737-8200.
Yeah, not to call it the MAX.
Exactly. Okay. But that's a technical question. But
yeah, exactly.
Do you remember some HR related questions they had?
Like, why do you want to work for us? Or the typical question is, how do you see yourself in 5 years?
Okay.
Because they want to see if you expect to stay with them and become a captain.
Yeah.
Because for them to train people, like even in line training and after it use resource, so they prefer to hire people they will keep.
Of course. Especially as you gain experience, you become more and more valuable. They can then become an instructor or manager, you can do. You can become quite precious to them. Interesting, this question: how do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Because that's a typical classic interview question. Right? You remember in the course we explained that there are 3 different types of interviews.
When you look at the past.
That's right. There's the advanced interview, which always asks questions in the past because they're the best indicator of how you're going to behave tomorrow. So if I want to know how you're going to behave tomorrow in my company, I would try and gather evidence of how you've behaved in the recent past. Okay. And then I will ask you examples around that, which I will, if I have a feeling that this example is real and you cannot really talk about an example in detail if it's not real anyway, then I'll have a good idea of how you're going to behave tomorrow. So that's the advanced. The hybrid interview, so then the classic interview, is an interview that's typically is not run by advanced recruitment departments. Advanced recruitment departments have access to a lot of HR tools. They have personality questionnaires and things like that. But when you have a classic, which is typically for smaller airlines, business jet companies, and sometimes we find classic questions at low-cost airlines, such as Ryanair, then the questions will be in the future. And a real classic interview has questions almost only in the future. And why is that? It's simple. It's because at the classic interview, you don't have a recruiter who is trained in recruitment. They typically are specialists in their field. There'll be an instructor, there'll be a chief pilot, someone who works at the office. They've not had an extra stack of training in recruitment. And for them, you're going to arrive tomorrow. So they're going to ask you questions on how are you going to behave tomorrow? And the problem with that is that, of course, the future doesn't yet exist. And so you could answer anything and do the complete opposite when you're actually working for them. So you could invent anything. Even if you would decide to leave Ryanair after 3 years and you already knew, you could say something else and they would have no way to check whether it's true. But it's an interesting question. Of course, any airline wants to make sure that you've chosen them for a good reason, that you're aligned with their mission, that you understand what they stand for and that you're aligned with that, and that you foresee yourself staying on the long term. So everything that you write in your letter, on that you say, has to reflect this long-term projection. And it's important to explain that you align with their mission, because one of the main reasons people stay in a place is they feel connected with what it is that they're doing. They understand what they are doing and they like the mission that the airline has. For Ryanair, it's, Ryanair's allowed people to travel who couldn't travel before. Wizz Air, it's liberating lives through affordable travel. That's a mission. Wizz Air is probably the nicest, most clearest mission. But Ryanair and EasyJet have very similar ones. They allowed people to travel who could not travel before.
That's true.
Okay, in the past, if you wanted to go from Cork to Malaga, you had to go through Dublin or London, and it took time and it was expensive. And now all of a sudden, it's possible. So if they feel that you understand their mission and that you love them for it, and that you can explain that, then it's very easy for them to go further and say, well, now it makes sense that they might stay for a long period. And then you can say that. You can say, I've always wanted to fly for an airline that I understand the mission of, that I like the mission of, also an airline that's financially successful. And Ryanair is. Why? Because I want to stay there. I want to stay with this one airline for 30 years. And this is how you can tick both boxes in one go and prevent them from giving you an objection. Okay, so sorry, I've digressed again. But I'm very passionate about
That's very interesting.
About these topics. So you prepared for your interview, you had all of these questions. And in those days, though, while you didn't have access to our training, so what it is that, first of all, Ryanair was hiring quite a lot. So it's always good to present yourself when the doors are open.
Yeah.
And two, I know, because I've seen Mathieu after when he became a client, when he transitioned away from Ryanair, he's a very good candidate, naturally. So you passed, yes. But you took a bit of a risk, in my opinion, because without knowing it, which is the case of most pilots, because most pilots will do the same thing. They'll go on the internet to gather information. But imagine when you have 2 weeks to prepare and you go on the internet when the information is overwhelmingly rich, you gain the opposite of what you need, which is clarity.
It's true. Yeah, you have everything on internet.
Yes.
You need to
Yeah, there's too much information. In my days, there was too little information. Today, there's so much information. And even if you had 6 months to prepare, come a point, you could always go deeper and find more videos, more things, and you can't make a method out of that. And that's actually why people, including myself, when I buy a training on video marketing or on something else, I end up buying the training because there's just so much on there that I can't make a method out of it. And if I want a result, I need a method, very simply. So there is that, and then people will, of course, speak a lot to their friends, which is normal, and you should do it. The problem is the interview will always vary a lot from candidate to candidate. And even though the questions could be, usually there are people gather a list of questions. They have some of them for Air France, for Ryanair, for British Airways. But the problem is that things will change quite quickly depending on the very first answer that the candidate will give. For instance, if you introduce yourself and you're very articulate, well, then we're just going to listen because it's just a good performance. But when you present yourself, to the contrary, you are either too verbose, or you don't get to the point, or you don't use a chronological order, we're going to have to ask questions right in the middle of your presentation. And right from there, the interview is completely different. So your friend will not have the same interview as you. And whilst they may remember the 10 questions they got asked, they will never really remember all the little questions between the questions. That's the ones that make the difference. Whether the interview was actually an easy exercise for the recruiter or whether they had to work really hard to get what they needed, maybe succeeded and maybe failed. So there was a risk that was taken, but because you're an excellent candidate, your communication's excellent, you smile, it's just nice to be with you, I guess. You worked quite a lot. You were telling me that you were very motivated. You were very motivated. Tell me about this. I liked when we prepared, you told me I was very motivated. A lot of candidates will be motivated, but some are more. You can really see it when you see them. So when you're telling me I was motivated, what do you mean?
I mean, I remember leaving the train to go to the airport to fly to Rome. I was thinking like, okay, it's like the interview of my life. Like, I need to get it. It was because I dreamt of it for 5 years, maybe more. And then I had the possibility to get a seat in the Boeing 737. I mean, I knew I was at the right place at the good time. So then I was willing to do whatever it takes to get it. Because then, interesting, I thought, okay, I will pay 800 euros to do one more simulator training. And I thought in my head, okay, if I don't pay for it, I pass. It's nice. If I don't pay for it and I fail, I will regret it.
For sure.
If I pay for it, I pass, I will be happy anyway. And if I pay for it and I don't pass, I will not regret it. So for me, it was better to invest more money on top.
Yeah.
Because then I paid, I passed, but I never regretted it. I was happy that I paid more training, but at the end, it was the right decision.
The most important training is the one you'll do the closest to your interview, which is why our training is also so important. And skimming on this, when this can really make a very big difference, is taking a risk. You know, at the very end of your journey, you really want to be perfectly prepared because, well, your ability to actually make money depends on it. And the whole point is to not have money problems now, right? So,
exactly.
Okay, very good. Something I like about your motivation, and you didn't mention it now, but I see it inside of you very clearly, something that you could have mentioned during your interviews as well, is it's not enough to tell a recruiter, I'm motivated. You have to provide evidence of your motivation. I say this quite a lot. In your case, look at everything you've done. You were interested in trains. You went to knock on the door of the train driver to try and be on in the TGV's cabin, right?
Yeah. Then I drove a few times and then I said, okay.
You almost every time you were on a plane asked to speak to the pilots, and that's actually how you found out about Ryanair. You seem to be someone who, when you want something, you really do a lot. You got your BIA. You knew at the end of high school already that it was going to cost you money. You put together a plan. This is evidence. This means when I'm in front of you and you're telling me your story, I believe that you're motivated because you showed me that it's true. You've put in place so much. So if you are in this case and you know that you're motivated, you need to get it outside of you what it is that you've done to prove whoever's in front of you that when you set your eyes on a goal, you take it seriously and you do certain things. Okay. Evidence your motivation. Okay. And I think you did really well to prepare for the sim at Aviomar as well, because was the sim exercise that you had at Ryanair different from what you had during the MCC?
Just a little bit different, like the calls out were different.
Okay.
Because during the MCC you do the Ryanair call out, but because the interview is for everyone, they don't want to put too much like Ryanair procedure.
Okay.
So they simplify it a bit.
Okay.
But the thing is, because it goes so fast where you are in the sim and you're not used that much to fly the aircraft. So if you prepare mentally, I think it's better you.
But how long is the session, the recruitment session?
In the simulator?
Yeah.
I think it was half an hour.
It's half an hour. So
maybe
where I'm getting at here is that usually
it's fast.
It's very different to an MCC sim.
Yeah.
An MCC sim, it's 10 sessions of 4 hours if you're doing an APS, like it was your case. Otherwise, even if it's a jog, you did an APS, right? It existed in those days?
Yeah, MCC
yeah.
APS.
APS, yeah. So you have 4 hours for each sim session, and you're gradually learning the SOPs, which means these are instructing sessions apart from the last one, which is a test. And most of it is done with the automatics working. They might degrade when you get failures, but you've got the automatics. And
true.
Now you end up at your assessment and you no longer have an instructor who's here to teach you. You have someone who's going to decide on your future, really, and who's mostly staying quiet when it comes to your performance until it's the end, which can be destabilizing. You don't know if you've done well. You don't know if, this little jitter you have, this little incursion above the target altitude was going to be a problem. You just get no feedback whatsoever. And half an hour goes very fast. And also, you tend to not have any automatics.
Yeah, it's true.
It's raw data.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
So if you don't, you should prepare for your interviews. As you know, that's what we do, and we'll be super happy to help you. You have to prepare for the sim as well. In fact, the recruitment is a chain. You have to prepare everywhere. You have to be good or better everywhere. You don't have to be excellent everywhere. It's better if you are, but good or better. You have to prepare a good application, a good CV and good cover letter. We help you with that as well. You have to prepare your psychometrics on the specialized websites that exist today. You have to be good at that. You have to be good at the interview, and you have to be good at the sim. So now we talked about preparing for the interview, but preparing for the sim, it's super important because this exercise is different, because it's mostly raw data. And to fly raw data, you know how to do it. You've done it on a single engine and multi-engine piston. It's very different to do that on a jet.
Yes.
Especially since during your whole MCC, you've not flown raw data except you've done maybe 2 hours of it because you have other things to cover. And your instruments don't look the same at all when you don't have access to the automatics. You'll have almost an empty screen, right?
Yeah, it's true. And then you have the stress of the interview and everything.
So invest in a good... I often tell people invest maybe in 2 sessions for the sim preparation. We have a course for this. You can go and look at it on our website where you can prepare already from home, which really helps you make the best of your very first session. Plan for 2 sessions, because when you arrive at the first session, if you're not that good yet, the second session usually will do it for you. Also, in your case, you didn't have the problem of your flying skills degrading because it all happened really fast.
Yes, true.
But for most candidates, you will wait 6 months before your first opportunity. And if you fail there, you might wait 3 to 6 months for another one. That's actually how the market is today. And your flying skills, they will degrade. And your experience on a machine, on a jet, is very limited. It's limited to those 10 sessions. So actually, you're not very good yet because you don't have experience, which is one more reason why you should prepare for the sim. So tell me then when you arrived there, how did it go? How did the interview go?
Well, you meet the other candidates.
Yeah.
You dress well, of course.
So it was in Rome, eh? It was not in Dublin. For you, your final interview was in Rome.
Yeah, everything was in Rome.
Okay.
Well, you meet the other candidate. Then they do a presentation, like half an hour.
Yeah.
And then you wait, and because we met like at 8 o'clock, and it was just like half an hour interview asking question and half an hour simulator, and I finished like the last one at 5 p.m. So we had to wait a lot.
A lot of waiting.
Yeah, a lot of wait between the candidates, but then you talk with the other candidate, and at some point they call you for the interview, you do your best, and then they call you for the sim, you do your best. And after when it was done, it was good because we met with the other candidates and we went to visit Rome, have a nice restaurant, everything. And about a week later, you know, every day you check your emails like 1,000 times, and then you get the email. It's nice.
Okay, but tell me more about the interview itself.
Interview itself. Well, so it started.
How many assessors?
So first it was the HR and technical question. So for the HR question, the guy was in Dublin on a video. And I just had it was a captain, Ryanair captain, asking me the technical question. So we were three, like the Ryanair captain for the technical question.
Yeah.
And a guy in Dublin physically on Teams.
Right. So that was a hybrid interview, in fact, in that hybrid setting.
But I think it was just after COVID, so maybe it was the reason why. And so he was asking me questions.
It was after COVID. Sorry, I thought you did it in 2013. So sorry.
2021.
So what happened? I got my timeline wrong about you. You finished your high school in 2013. Was that?
Yes.
Okay, because that's when you made the decision to go the modular route.
Exactly. I started with the PPL, but then I only started the CPL about 5 or 6 years after, because I worked in a flight school in the meantime.
Okay.
And I flew a lot in VF. I was flying in VFR in France, so I did like 400 hours on light aircraft in France. It was an amazing experience.
Okay.
But there were a few times before I started the CPL and the
Okay, so
instrument
you
rating.
always flew.
Yes.
And because you did your PPL, and then you started working at a flight school, which gave you went to the US to do a bit of maturing.
Yes.
And then you finished your maturing in French, your hours building in France. And because you were at a flight school, you were able to do a lot of hours.
Exactly.
And then you did your CPL.
Exactly.
Now I got it. Okay. So now it's just post-COVID.
Yeah.
When you're doing your interview, and it's like three people set up. Okay. So a Ryanair captain with you and an HR person in Dublin.
Exactly.
Okay. So how did it go?
Like the question were as expected, because I prepared. Then the question feels like, okay, thanks God I prepared, because it gave me confidence.
Yeah.
I got the HR question as expected, I would say. And then you just need to adapt a bit. But of course, the challenge for me was more to understand the English of the guy on the Teams. Yeah, on the Teams, like the language.
Yeah, particularly in Ireland, sometimes the accents, if you're not used to it, it can be a bit.
Yeah.
It's not as accented as Scottish, but it's still.
It's true.
It can be. Yeah.
I was based in Dublin, like with Ryanair, 6 months, and in the morning you come to the flight deck. Irish people are super nice, so they make jokes. But sometimes you lost, but you don't understand.
What you do then? You just laugh?
Yeah. I mean, no, you try to understand. Sometimes it's hard, But the Irish people are super nice. So we had this interview in Dublin. When you get the HR question, the captain was checking my documents, because you have to bring all your logbooks, and they ask many documents, like reference letters and everything.
Yes.
Actually, it took me maybe 3 days to prepare my logbook on all the documents. Very important to always keep your logbook clear and everything. So, but for 5 minutes I had the question, and then for maybe 10 minutes the technical question as expected. So it was good I prepared as well. And then they say, okay, that's done.
How were they? Were they smiling with you all the time? Were they nodding? Did you feel that it was going well?
Yeah, they were nice.
Yeah.
But as well, they were like focused on their task. You could feel like they had many interviews to do, and they knew what they were doing, what they wanted to check, and they were like very straightforward, I would say, like asking questions and but trying to help me as well. Like for the technical question, if I don't have the solution straight, he was trying to help me and see if I could adapt. And
you remember one tricky technical question they asked?
Well, the only one I remember at the moment is like, okay, the aircraft is parked at night, the QNH is 1000, and then the QNH changed to 1010 in the morning, but you didn't change the altimeter setting. What will the altimeter of the aircraft show? Basic question.
Okay.
But I mean, this one I was prepared, so...
It's good to be prepared on this one, because you can get it wrong quite
easy.
Yeah,
but if you don't prepare, and if you did your ATPL a long time before, it's hard to remember. Even if you ask me today, I will need some time to think about it. So.
Yes. Okay, very good. So how long did the whole interview last?
Maximum half an hour.
Okay, so it's a very, very quick interview. And normally at a major airline, you're looking more... I suspect that the were the HR questions very deep?
No.
No. Any questions on what you've done in the past that were a lot of examples were asked?
No.
So it's really more of a... This is why we often say Ryanair is a hybrid interview, because not many questions asked in the past, so it's already a bit more of a classic, but because they ask also technical questions or scenario-based questions. You are in this situation, the captain's arriving late, and now what do you do? This is like a scenario-based question, which is an excellent way of actually seeing how someone...
No, you tell me. And some question which were important for us is like, if the captain wants to land and the aircraft is not stabilized, and I think you know better than me, but they wanted to see if we were able to take over and say no to the captain.
Yeah,
that was the question everyone got. Like, the situation is wrong, and the captain is still going into the situation. Will you be able to
resist?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And for this, in advanced interview course, we have what we call an intervention model, which is very healthy, which I've used my whole life, and it's a way of doing a gradual intervention using some very clear and keywords that will get your colleague to at some point realize that they have to do it in a different way. And if they don't, and if safety is compromised, then you would have to take over. If they don't, and safety is not directly compromised, you're going to have to make an arbitration. Do I preserve the CRM, or do I actually take over because the situation can no longer last? This is an arbitration as a co-pilot that you're going to have to make. The airlines will want to know that you have it inside of you to resist to someone who is your superior. And you're going to think, well, the captains sometimes make bad decisions. Well, it can happen. We're all human. We can get tired. We can get tunneled. We can get all sorts of biases. It can happen. We can also have personal constraints that mean that we want to rush back home because tomorrow we're going on holiday or whatever. When you see something like this in a captain and you see them rushing, you know that you might have to intervene or use the first stages of the intervention model. So using intervention to show an airline that you would intervene, if you show that you already have a system in place, for them it's like, okay, great, a big tick in the box. This person's thought about it. They already know what they were going to do. And that's very reassuring, which is why we teach this inside Advanced Interview course, amongst other things. So you had a few situational questions like these.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, because we expected the question, then you are prepared.
Yeah, it's easier.
And you know how to answer. And you don't start thinking, oh, I should say yes, I should say no. Like it's very good to be prepared for those. And I was prepared, so it helps.
Now, some of these questions are fairly easy to answer if you're prepared. Others, you need a bit more... Others can be a bit more tricky. We've got around 8 questions like these inside Advanced Interview course that we really detail. One of them is interesting, is that you've got a bird strike, and when you have a bird strike, just so you know, you have a suspected bird strike on the approach. So you don't know if you've hit the bird. You didn't hear a noise. The engine remained exactly the same on the approach. You landed, and then when the captain does the walk around, he doesn't see anything. The airplane's completely clean, no feathers, no blood, nowhere, no indication. And the captain told you during briefing that tomorrow, captain's Brazilian, he's going back to see his family and he's looking forward to his holiday. So now you get the idea that, okay, today could be the day when this otherwise perfectly fit captain could cut a corner. And now he comes back to the cockpit and he tells you that actually he saw nothing. And so, well, he would like to go, but you know that an engineering inspection is required after a bird strike, it's mandatory, even if it's a suspected bird strike. And you're at an airport where you don't have an engineer, which means it's maybe a 3-hour delay before they get an engineer to the airplane. So in this case, you would resist, right? If the captain says, no, we're going to go, you would, of course, you would resist. Candidates have failed for either not resisting or for resisting too much. You have to be very careful with this. Because...
Interesting.
Yeah, because come a point, if I was your captain and I was in this situation, forget about the holiday. I was going to agree with you. Okay, we have to do an engineering inspection, but let's think outside the box here and see if we can get a dispensation for it. Okay, so I'm going to call engineering, and you can listen to what I'm saying, and I'm going to see what they say. Do they really have to send an engineer, or can we do a few checks ourselves, knowing that we saw no blood, no feathers, nothing? And the scenario builds like that, where the captain gets engineering, and engineering says, oh, yeah, in fact, in this case, we have a bulletin from Boeing that says that you're allowed to go and check the mat computer at the back, and if it says all okay, and you do an engine run like this and like that, and it's all fine, then we can clear you to go. And so some candidates have failed for going, no, never.
Oh, really?
And now the captain's done something reasonable. The airline's providing a perfectly fine solution that sounds very reasonable, in fact. And also they are willing to send you an email to show that they are approving this. Now, okay, it's okay.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So for you, it's of course. But for a candidate who's destabilized by this question and is prepared in a certain way, and they know that they should say no, because that's the goal of this type of exercise, they're going to say no all the way. And we've heard of some candidates failing.
Interesting.
Because of that. Yeah. So which is why you see these questions, they can be quite tricky. Sometimes they will involve an element of knowledge, knowing a few things on flight time limitations, knowing a few things on holdover times. And they could, there's a very famous scenario as well on de-icing. Basically you've de-icing, you arrive at the end of your holdover time, and the captain wants to depart anyway. And it's a very similar scenario. This one involves a fair amount of knowledge. So if you don't have the knowledge, it's a bit of a problem. It's too long for me to detail this scenario now in this video, but know that these scenarios are very well built. It's actually what I prefer from the Ryanair interviews. And they're a very good way to see how you're thinking, and they require a lot of preparation.
You mean today they are giving questions like this?
Still. Yeah. I think it's one. I really like this approach. Air France don't do this. BA don't do this. It's a way to ask you questions in a hypothetical future, but because it involves you manipulating various concepts, you can see how you actually would probably do it tomorrow, how you would use your building blocks to find a solution. So, it's a good...
nice.
It's very... We didn't do this at Emirates either. Yeah. At Emirates, it was all questions in the past.
All questions.
Okay, and so, well, that's probably it. And because next time, I think we said we would discuss your type rating.
Exactly.
And the initial training, which is
the
a very
training.
tough part, line training. And I'll try and speak a bit less last time, but next time, sorry.
No, it's good. You have a lot of nice things.
I'm motivated.
You know the subject.
I know the subject. Okay, so if you want to know more about Matpilote on Instagram, Matpilote 737, sorry.
737.
On TikTok or on YouTube. And you can also, of course, check our website to get onto advanced interview course or the sim preparation course if you've got a sim that's coming up. And don't forget, if you liked this content, if you want to see more of it, to like the video, of course, and subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you in the next video.
This podcast was brought to you by Airline Selection Program, a company that is focused on helping you succeed at airline selections. Our flagship course, Advanced Interview Course, has helped hundreds of pilots just like you become successful. Visit our website at online.airlineselectionprogram.com and find out how you too can get the job of your dreams.